So I was watching, or rather, I was listening to Modern Vintage Gamer in the background, and his video, I believe it's called It's Up to Us to Save Video Games, and the thumbnail reads, Game Preservation is Dying. So I'm guessing the full title is supposed to be Game Preservation is Dying, It's Up to Us to Save Video Games. And I must say that I very much agree with him on a lot of points. Not entirely, but very much on a lot of points. Now, just like what Modern Vintage Gamer said, yes, video games haven't been around for that long. That is true. Yes, I agree with him that something needs to happen for big companies to let people own the games they buy from their stores. It's been proven that some companies will delete games from people's libraries even though people paid actual money to play that. Hey, let me tell you a story with me and Square Enix. So I bought The World Ends With You on my smartphone and my tablet, but since my smartphone couldn't hold that much storage and my tablet, I had to, for the time being, delete it. And then I was trying to reinstall The World Ends With You, and I discovered that I couldn't. So I went to Google and typed in my problem. Hey, where's The World Ends With You on smartphones? Why can't I download? And I found this Reddit post that announced that Square Enix would take away The World Ends With You on the Google Play Store. And I was all like, no, I paid for that. And I uninstalled it. And now I can't reinstall it on my devices. No. So yeah. On very many points what Modern Vintage Gamer said, I do agree with him, and I understand. Truly. But hey, it's not only modern gaming that has this kind of a core problem. Can I tell you a story from way back from my younger years, when I was a kid/teenager? So on the PlayStation, I had a game that I could not read or understand what it meant, cause I didn't speak much English back then and I couldn't read and write. That came a little bit later on for me, and then years later in my teen days, when Wikipedia and YouTube became more accessible, I rediscovered that game that I didn't know what it said on the glass casing. And the game was called Breath of Fire 3, and I thought to myself, you know, what happened to this series? Why don't I hear much of it? So I went to Wikipedia and found Breath of Fire 4, and then I found Breath of Fire 5, and they just stopped at Breath of Fire 5. I found the soundtrack on YouTube back then, and I liked the music. I liked it very much. And so I had to dust off my PlayStation 2, and I bought a used copy of Breath of Fire 5 on the PS2, and I liked it. I liked BOF5, and today's gamers don't even know that Breath of Fire even exists, except for a few cameos and mentionings and merchandise whatever. The soundtrack for Breath of Fire is available on Steam, but not the actual games. And it's not just a classic series like BOF 3, 4, and 5 that is inaccessible today. Another gem, another trilogy that haven't seen the light of day on either Steam or GOG is the Yu-Gi-Oh! Power of Chaos trilogy. Anybody heard of it? Anybody? Yu-Gi-Oh! The Power of Chaos, Kaiba the Revenge. Has anybody heard of it? Me, I've heard of it. I have. Anybody else? Oh. But yeah, I have fond memories of Kaiba the Revenge. Of the whole trilogy. That was the one that I played a lot as a kid. And I can't find the Power of Chaos trilogy on Steam or GOG. So how can one play Breath of Fire 3 for the PlayStation Portable, 4 on PC, 5 on the PS2, and the Power of Chaos trilogy for PC when they're not even accessible on Steam or GOG? Unfortunately, one must use different means to play these gems, and I think you know what I'm talking about. I cannot say this on YouTube because of the strict rules and guidelines. Now, I would love for these games, the unrelated BOF games and the unrelated Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, to be widely accessible, but to this very day, both Konami and Capcom don't seem to have any intentions to re-release them. And that's why I am actually happy that one can use different means to play them when you normally can't. This, ladies and gentlemen, are the positives of using different means of playing classic games. And that is what I think modern vintage gamer might be talking about, game preservation of older games, I guess. But can we also talk about the bad side of quote-unquote game preservation? The bad side is when random people are selling fanlations without the proper permissions from the actual publishers. That's actually immoral, illegal, and wrong. And hey, it's not the fan translators who are selling them. No, that's not how this is. Those who are selling these fanlations have nothing to do with the fan translators. And some fanlators have even stopped translating Japanese titles because they realize that one of those pirates are going to sell it on their websites without their permission, or without Nintendo's permission, or without anybody's permission. Some fanlators realize this. And this, in my opinion, is the negative side of quote-unquote game preservation. Would you like to hear another bad angle of this quote-unquote game preservation argument? Let's say Japanese visual novels. I don't want to call VNs games. I don't want to say let's play to VNs. But let's say you experienced a VN back in 2009. But then a company who has a blue jade logo decided to localize that VN from all those years ago, more than 10 plus years later. And surprise, surprise, not that many people bought it. And why didn't that many people buy it when the VN was finally localized? Well, it's obvious. They actually downloaded and applied a fan to that VN and experienced it. That is, played it. No, I don't want to say play to VNs. They experienced it, for the lack of a proper term. But hey, I actually don't blame those people for downloading and applying a fan to that VN. I don't blame those people. I mean, who could have guessed that VN would be localized years later? Who could have guessed that? Who could have guessed that VNs would be finally accessible to the West? Nobody. And that too is unfortunately another downside of quote-unquote game preservation. When a game or an ebook, a fluffed up ebook, was experienced years prior and then was localized years later. But now that I made these kinds of arguments, in my point of view and subjective opinion, I would like to bring up DLCs, microtransactions and DRM, because I do feel that it does coincide with gaming preservation in a way. I would like to point my binoculars at our lawmakers and politicians. Our lawmakers and politicians, I feel, are also to blame that we had things like DLCs, microtransactions, and DRM. No, I am not saying all of this is their fault or they are mostly to blame for this. I'm not saying that. What I'm really trying to say is that because of that weak spot in the laws that doesn't say much about what is and what is not acceptable consumer practice in video games, some of the developers are taking advantage of that. And unfortunately, because our local politicians and lawmakers are much older and doesn't seem to understand much about today's gaming industry, they don't seem to take it so seriously. They disregard gaming as nothing but a kid's toy. Our laws haven't been keeping up. I mean, I don't think I see anywhere in the classes or anywhere that these three things that I just mentioned are illegal or anything like that. In my opinion, these three said things are bad. In my opinion, DLCs and microtransactions, they only serve to nickel and dime the users. I dislike them immensely. But which company was this again? Electronic Arts? This spokeswoman said, oh no, it's not really loot boxes. It's like Kinder Eggs actually. They're like Kinder Eggs. They're like surprise mechanics, the woman said. And I did not like what she had to say about that to her defense. I did not like that. But you know, do you want to know what I think in my opinion? In my opinion, the consumers/fans are also to blame for enabling DLCs and microtransactions. Consumers and fans are partially to blame. When a big company is trying to nickel and dime you for weapon skins and horse armor, you're supposed to turn around and say, no thank you, I'm not interested. I just want to play the full game, and I don't want to play a half-baked product that you released now, that you're trying to fix with patches, because the game, in my opinion, should not have been released in this kind of a state, but should have been released at least for an extra 12 months, at least. I want to have a full game, a fully fledged game that isn't riddled with bugs and glitches. But people aren't doing something like that. I feel like most consumers and fans and gamers are enabling these companies. They are enabling them. So this DLCs and micros can only stop when your average player and consumer simply stops buying them. Simple as that. But do you want to know what your average fan / consumer will say to their defense? They will say things like, oh, but you know, if I don't buy this skin or DLC, then I can't be a supporter. I want to support them the same way I'm supporting my favorite football team or soccer team. And to those people, I would like to say, people, companies like Electronic Arts, Google, Activision and Blizzard, they're not being bullied and harassed at an elementary school, if you know what I'm saying. It isn't like that. They just want your f***ing money, and you talk with your money. When a company releases a buggy PC port of a game, you're not going to buy that game anyways and say, oh, you know, I should just be happy that I got a game anyways. I should just be happy. No, you shouldn't do that. That's not how this works. They just want your money and that's it. Money talks. And that's how it is. You know, I think I can understand, why developers want to implement DRM into their games for fear that an unrelated individual would jump in the middle, impersonate that big company or one of the key developers and sell that game on their website without anybody's permission. I can understand. But in my opinion, I think developers are going on this the wrong way when they implement DRM. I think it is wrong. And DRM, so I've heard, have also been proven to kill performance on PCs. I mean, what is the point of a DRM when some random person overseas is just going to unlock that game anyways? Now I can understand that DRM can be a good thing in the beginning when the game is new, but then some 5 or 10 years later, it's not gonna be so useful anymore when the game is out of fashion and style. Modern Vintage Gamer, thank you for opening up this discussion about game preservation and what these malicious practices these companies are doing and saying. So, thank you very much, Modern Vintage Gamer. All the power to you.